Have you ever sat in your car or laid awake next to him and wondered, am I ever going to be enough for him? Or is his past always going to be the thing that decides how close we can get? I remember feeling that so deeply. It hurt. It felt like I was competing with ghosts, with memories, trauma, wounds he didn't talk about, patterns I didn't understand, and reactions that felt so much bigger than the moment we were in. And for a long time, I thought the problem was me. I thought if I tried harder, loved better, stayed calmer, maybe I could outrun what happened to him. But here's the truth I wish someone had handed me years ago. You're not in competition with his past. You were never meant to replace what hurt him. And the distance you feel, it isn't because you're not enough. It's because trauma learned to speak louder than love long before you ever showed up. So let's talk about what's really going on beneath that question and what can actually help you feel close, connected, and secure again. When you love someone who has lived through childhood trauma, there are moments where it genuinely feels like his past takes up more space in your marriage than you do. And that feeling is real, it's valid, and it's one of the most painful places a partner can be. Here's why it feels that way. Trauma shapes a person's survival responses long before love ever enters the picture. His past isn't bigger than you, but it is definitely older than you. It taught his nervous system how to read danger. It taught him how to shut down. It taught him how to distance. And it taught him how to protect himself when emotions get too close. And those responses, they show up automatically, not because he chooses them, but because his body learned them a long time ago. So when you're sitting there wondering, why does it feel like his trauma has more power than our connection? It's because trauma doesn't live in the stories. It lives in the body. It lives in the reactions, in the tone changes, in the shutdowns, in the defensiveness, in the moments where he suddenly pulls away for reasons he can't even name. And here's what makes it even more confusing. You're the closest person to him, which means you're the safest, which means you're the one his body relaxes around, which means the old wounds have room to surface. It feels personal. It feels like a reflection of your worth, but it's actually a reflection of his pain. And understanding that, really understanding it, is the first crack of light in a very dark moment. One of the most heartbreaking fears partners carry is this idea: I'm losing to his past. His trauma matters more to him than I do. No matter what I do, it's never enough to outweigh what happened to him. But I want you to hear this gently and clearly. You are not competing with his trauma, and you never were. Trauma isn't a rival. It's not another woman. It's not a choice he's making over you. Trauma is an unhealed injury. It's a wound that formed his survival responses long before he had the emotional vocabulary to understand what he was living through. So when he pulls away or shuts down or gets defensive or spirals into self-protection, it's not because you're not enough, and it's not because the past wins. It's because his nervous system is doing what it has always done: protect him. You can't outlove trauma. You can't outperform it. You can't work harder than a survival instinct. And that's not because you're failing. It's because trauma responses don't respond to pressure, performance, or perfection. Here's the reframe that changes everything. You're not losing to his past. You're witnessing his pain, not his preference. You're not seeing what he values. You're not seeing what he fears. And the moment you stop trying to win against trauma, in the moment you reclaim your power, your clarity, and your sense of self in this relationship. When you're loving a man who gets triggered easily, who retreats into himself, who goes quiet or distant, who feels swallowed up by memories he can't articulate, it is so easy to look at yourself and think, if I were enough, this wouldn't be happening. If I were enough, our love would feel easier. If I were enough, he wouldn't still be hurting. But I want you to take a deep breath with me here, because that belief is a lie trauma tells you, not the truth about you. His trauma is not proof that you're lacking. His reactions are not evidence that you're failing. His distance is not a reflection of your worth. His trauma responses are not about your value. They're about his wounds. You are enough, but you are not the cure. And here's where the exhaustion creeps in for so many partners. When you're always the steady one, right? The emotional anchor, the safe place, the one who keeps the family running when he checks out, you start confusing his dysregulation with your inadequacy. You start believing that his pain means you're not doing enough, when in reality, his pain means he never had the support he needed long before you. Being enough doesn't mean removing his triggers. It doesn't mean holding everything together alone. It doesn't mean sacrificing your own well-being so he never struggles. Being enough means being human, being steady, not perfect, being compassionate, not self-erasing, being present without taking responsibility for the healing he still needs to do. And listen, you don't have to become the antidote to everything that broke him. You don't have to carry the entire emotional load. You don't have to compete with his past. In fact, the fact that you're still here, still trying, still seeking understanding, still wanting to build something better, that is the proof of your strength, your love, your enoughness. And nothing about his trauma can take that away from you. So if being enough isn't about fixing him or competing with his past or carrying the entire emotional load, what actually creates connection? It's not perfection, and it's not walking on eggshells, and it's definitely not trying to anticipate and prevent every single possible trigger. Real connection in a trauma-impacted relationship comes from co-regulation. Two nervous systems learning how to find safety together. I know, it sounds complicated, but it's actually unbelievably simple in practice. Connection starts with the moments where you feel grounded, calm, and safe. Not these big conversations, not these intense emotional deep dives, not the let's fix everything right now energy, but the small things. The micro moments, a gentle touch passing in the hallway, laughing about something ridiculous in the kitchen, a soft, hey, I'm glad you're here, look across the room, sitting close on the couch, even if no one is talking. Those tiny moments build something trauma never got to ruin, felt safety. And when safety is there, even in small doses, he doesn't have to fight you. He doesn't have to protect himself from you. He doesn't have to brace for impact. He can just be. Here's another important truth. Boundaries create connection too. Giving him space during dysregulation isn't rejection. It's respect for his nervous system. Pressing pause when things start escalating doesn't shut down the relationship. It protects it, saying, I'm here, but this moment feels like a trigger, not a me problem, helps both of you stay grounded instead of getting lost in the moment. Remember the stump versus bear metaphor? In those high trigger moments, his mind sees a bear. His body reacts to a bear. His defensiveness is fighting a bear. You learning to recognize, oh, this isn't about me. He's seeing a bear that isn't actually there, keeps you from getting pulled into the cyclone of fear and shame. And that shift, that quiet, steady, internal shift in you creates more connection than any grand gesture ever will. Because suddenly the two of you aren't battling each other. You're working together against the thing that's actually causing the pain. Connection grows when safety grows. And safety grows when both partners stop personalizing what is truly a trauma response and start navigating it with compassion, clarity, and calm. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be superhuman. You don't need to fix his whole story. You just need to create moments where both of you can breathe. That's where healing begins. That's where love takes root. And that's where connection becomes possible again. Not because you outperformed the past, but because the present finally feels safe. Now, let's talk about what happens when you're doing everything right. You're regulating. You're separating yourself from the trauma responses. You're creating safety in micro moments of connection, and his past still feels really, really loud. Maybe the triggers are still there. Maybe the shutdowns still happen. Maybe the distance shows up out of nowhere. Maybe the progress feels slower than you hoped. And that can leave you wondering, if I'm doing all this, why does it still feel like the past has more influence than I do? Here's the truth that most people never say out loud. Trauma healing is not linear, and it's not fast, and it doesn't move in a straight line just because the relationship has become safer. His past might still feel loud at times, not because you're failing, not because you're not enough, but because those wounds were formed long before he ever had the chance to heal them. The volume of the past is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of his pain. And here's the part that gives you your power back. Even if the past shows up, even if the wounds still speak, even if the reactions still appear, healing is happening underneath. Every single time you pause instead of react, it's healing. Every time you don't personalize his defensiveness, it's healing. Every time you name, this feels like dysregulation and not distance, it's healing. Every time you stay grounded instead of getting swept into the storm, it's healing. The past being loud doesn't mean the relationship isn't progressing. It means his nervous system is slowly learning a new way to exist. And the more safety he feels, the more his body learns. This moment isn't the past. This moment is different. That's where the shift happens, not all at once, but quietly, steadily, consistently. Your presence is helping, even when the progress is quiet, even when it feels invisible, even when it feels like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You're not competing with his past. You are helping rewrite what safety feels like today. And that matters more than you'll ever see in the moment. So here's what I want you to take today. So here's what I want you to take with you today. You're not competing with his past. You're not battling his trauma for importance. And you are not supposed to be the antidote for all the pain he's carried. The past isn't bigger than you. It's just older than you. It shaped him before he even had the language to make sense of it. But you're helping shape who he becomes now. You are enough, not because you can fix what happened, but because you bring safety, presence, love, and steadiness into a world that once felt unpredictable and unsafe to him. Your job was never to replace his past. Your job is to help create a present that feels safe enough for both of you to breathe again. And every time you show up with clarity, every time you refuse to take his trauma responses personally, every time you anchor yourself instead of absorbing his dysregulation, you're building a relationship where connection can finally take root. If this episode is speaking to you, if it hit that tender place in your chest, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. We're diving even deeper in how to create more peace, understanding, and connection in a trauma-impacted marriage. And if you're listening to this and thinking, Danielle, I need help with this now, check the links below for tools, next steps, and support. You don't have to figure this out alone. We're in this together. I'll see you in the next episode.